Hi, my name is Suzanne Moore, and I'm a real estate broker here in Key West. I've also been a resident here on the island for 31 years, and I'm the Realtor Political Action Committee Chair for the Key West Association of Realtors. Over the last 3 weeks, I have sat down with all 9 candidates that are running for Commissioner and Mayor. Why they should vote for Sarah for Commissioner this year? Why should they vote for Bobby Lurie?
Trying to bring people together.
What I have accomplished in 23 months, my opponent hasn't done in 8 years.
That's not factual.
Okay.
It's not factual.
I asked them all property-related questions, including but not limited to housing, property rights, short-term rentals, property taxes, the workings of the building department, and all things real estate. All these interviews are available on my YouTube channel, no cuts and no edits. If you'd like to watch these, just click the link below, and I hope that these interviews will help you decide who to vote for in the upcoming elections. Today we have with us Juan Llera, who is running for Commissioner. And you're very welcome, Juan. Thank you so much for
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
So why don't you start off and tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and how did you come to be in Key West and what you do here in town?
Yes, absolutely. Again, first of all, thank you for having me.
Sure.
This is great. My name is Juan Llera, and I'm a candidate for Key West City Commission District 4. I've been a resident of Key West about 30 years now. I have 2 children that were born here. One is 12 years old and another one that just turned 19. So I'm very passionate about the island. I was in the military. That's what brought me to Key West. I did 21 years, served 21 years in our military here in the United States, retired here, and then I was able to transition to state and federal law enforcement. And I did that for approximately 12 years. And now I currently work for the power industry here at the local level. I'm the chairman for the state of Florida, has 33 local utilities, like government utilities, and I chair training and safety for them, which is responsible for about 4 million Floridians. Then I'm the vice chair for the industry at the national level, and that's about 22 million Americans that we represent. So, but again, thank you for having me.
Sure.
Looking forward to it. So.
Yeah. So what made you this year run for Commissioner? What's your motivation for that?
So I've been following a lot of the dynamics at the local level in politics, and just some of the agendas and some of the candidates, and I was really concerned about our future. I have no intentions of going anywhere. Like I said, I had 2 children that were born here, and I like to remain here for the rest of my natural life. So I was really concerned about some of the policies, some of the discussions that we're having that will affect local business, just the quality of life in our community. So these are the things that are like, the last thing I'm not a politician, so the last thing I want to do is get involved in that environment. However, this is going to affect me, my family, my friends, my colleagues. I have a lot of friends that are business owners in Key West. It's going to affect them. So I said, I'm certainly going to put my name in the hat and do the best that I can to represent these folks or the local level. So
this is the first time you've run for any kind of campaign or office or in public office?
Yes, correct. This is my first time. Like I said, at the state level and nationally, it's more like an internal selection process. But for political purposes, this is the first time that I'm doing this.
So how, I think people are always interested to know, because it's not a question that you get asked very often. We don't get the opportunity to ask this. How are you finding running a campaign? Is it what you thought it was going to be? Is it different? Were you intimidated when you first started?
Absolutely. It is exhausting. I know that. I still maintain a full-time job, and I have, again, collateral duties at the state and national level. So I belong to several nonprofit organizations, some military nonprofit organizations in Key West. So I stay very busy, and then on top of that, run a campaign. I do a lot of my own stuff to kind of preserve the donations and be a good steward for the donations and the campaign money. So I do the best that I can to, if there's anything that I cannot do, then obviously I will have to seek some guidance and some help. But it is long days. And yesterday, actually, we completed our 8th forum. So we've had several forums, sometimes at lunchtime
Yeah.
between 11 and 1:30, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, some early evenings, some a little later. So it's a very dynamic. I've learned an awful lot.
Yeah.
I noticed that everyone has an opinion.
Yeah.
And you're not gonna, unfortunately, make everyone happy. So there has to be a happy medium, and always focusing on our local quality of life and supporting our
Right.
community
Right.
and our resources. So,
Right.
but-
If I was to say, if you do get elected, you know, we've had, it's a very divisive election, it seems to be this year.
yes.
How do you go about building the consensus that we would need to have a cohesive government, you know?
You know, and that's a great question that we actually addressed that last night. So I'm very good communicating. One, by spending the majority of my adult life in the military.
Right.
And they foster this sense of communication, leadership, management, bringing everyone together, we're a cohesive team.
Yeah.
And then as I transition to, again, another high-risk environment, which is law enforcement, you just build on that, where I feel like I'm very, very good and very comfortable. And actually, we continue to get praises from some of the folks that host these events, because the three candidates, or the other two candidates, including myself, we have a great relationship. So I've been able to foster this relationship where we communicate, we ask each other questions, we support each other. And so we've been kind of like hey, this is the folks that you want to follow.
Right.
These are folks that you want to emulate to have a successful campaign. So to answer your question, yes, I think that I will be very successful. Bringing that divide that we have, you know, the political barriers, because different ideals, you know, obviously,
Yes.
and then different ways of seeing things, different perspectives, and different cultures and different backgrounds. So I think I can do very well bringing us together and saying, hey, at the end of the day, there's going to be things that you're not going to agree on, and we're going to have to agree to disagree, but yet we have to do what's in the best interest of our community, you know, our citizens, our residents, our culture, our heritage, and then move forward. Because a great question that was asked last night was, if I may, was you're not always going to make decisions that you're going to be happy with. And I said, I have absolutely no problem doing that. I'll be able to compromise. I'm willing to compromise. So if there's something that is in the best interest of the vision and mission for the city, and I may not necessarily agree, but I know that is in our best interest, you'll have my support.
Right.
You know, and then we'll see how that works out.
Right.
So.
Right. Well, great. So we're gonna start off with a couple of questions about the property rights, housing. Right.
Okay.
Being in real estate, that's what I deal with all day, every day. But one of the things that keeps coming up on everyone's campaign is affordable workforce housing. It's been the thing that, you know, is constantly on the agenda. How do we improve it? So we have very little land remaining in Key West. And if we're going to create additional housing, you know, where do you think that's going to go? I'd like to get your opinions on how, the workforce and affordable housing situation overall in Key West. What's your opinion? Do we have enough? Should we be building more? Should we use what we have? Tell me what your opinions are.
Again, great question. And being a resident of Key West for 30 years now, for 3 decades, this has been a campaign priority for many, many, many years that I can remember.
Yeah.
So, and we're doing now better than ever, in my opinion. So there's been a lot of folks that came before us have worked towards this goal, and now we have a significant amount of available workforce housing. The restrictions and the problems that I see is the qualification criteria for these folks to be able to qualify. You make too much money and you're not going to be able to qualify. However, that criteria may be $75,000 for a family of 4, and in our environment, by the time you pay $30,000 in rent, and you have just, let's say, another $32,000 left over to maintain a family of 4, that's going to be extremely challenging. So one of the things that I like to work on is, once I get to that dais, is work with the city and potentially generate some programs where we can supplement some of these workforce housing fees. We can make it a little bit more accessible to the workforce. Because perfect example, the lofts in the waterfront, Truman waterfront.
Yeah.
There's a lot of condos, and I mean, you're in the business, much better than I do. But then the qualification process is what gets underway. And then there's several areas that we have some projects coming up now. We had this discussion yesterday during the forum, and I just keep hearing the same thing, that now we are in a place where there's availability, but then the qualification is the obstacle.
Yeah.
How can we get beyond that? How can we? Right. And so that's what we need to work on. That's what we need to get our heads together, potentially between, let's say the Realtor industry, the city, maybe, I don't know about the TDC because they're more tourism guided, but this is the workforce that tailors to that environment. So,
yeah, we've had some people say that, you can only really fix those issues at a state level, and really trying to build relationships with, those in Tallahassee to change
that's
the
important.
ceilings. But you think that we could certainly do something
Absolutely.
on a local level?
Absolutely. That the state level is definitely certainly extremely important.
Yeah.
And I think our current mayor has done a phenomenal job, breaching that gap we've had for many years. Not a very good friendly relationship with Tallahassee, and she's been successful on going up to Tallahassee and having the difficult conversations and asking for support and funding for our local community. She went to probably about 2 months ago and asked for like $1.5 million. They promised $7 million, and she came back with $5.5 million.
Right.
So I think we're doing great.
Right.
Where last time anything like that happened was over 10 years ago.
Yes. There hasn't been a lot of communication, I guess, at the state and
Absolutely.
level.
And now we have a lot of these representatives coming down and staying more involved and more engaged. But yes, at the local level, we can start and then kind of tell the state and potentially even the federal government, hey, this is what we're doing at our local level. Can we get a little support? Can you give us a little push so we continue to kind of go up the ladder a little bit?
So really managing it, you think we can definitely do more on a local
Absolutely. Level. We can initiate it here and then we can build from that.
Yeah. So kind of staying in that same thing with regards to housing, the city of Key West controls its zoning and building height restrictions. Okay. So with climate adaptation, all of our housing and our new construction all around town, you can see Midtown, lots of things are being torn to the ground, big new houses are going up. Not so much in Old Town, but certainly in Newtown, Midtown. The properties have to be raised up, and yet our height restrictions have remained the same. So how do you feel about revisiting the height restrictions on residential real estate, and then also with regards to commercial real estate, more in Newtown, in certain zones in town? Because it's something, it seems, that we might be able to control at a local level. What do you think about those things?
I think that is a great point that we can certainly entertain. We've seen the tide. We're in a unique geographical environment. Obviously, we're at sea level, and the tide continues to get higher. The water tables continue to grow. We talk about flooding and issues. Now we get a little bit of rain during high tide, and now 3/4 of the city is obviously underwater. So those are things that we have limitations on because we can only do so much to clear the drains and add more drains. But this is a natural issue that we're going to have, and to resolve some of those issues at the housing portion of it is, yes, we can lift the houses, and we're going to have that restriction, then we need to address it.
Right.
We need to say, hey, listen, what applied 20, 30, 40 years ago, it's no longer, no longer the policy that we can adhere to.
Right.
We have to evolve from that. So I believe that between the planning board, the building, department, we can get together and say, listen, we're going to have to revisit this. We're going to have to get a committee together or a panel together, and with subject matter experts, architects, and maybe potentially some realtors and residents, and say, okay, these are the limitations that we have now, and we need to work on this because it's unrealistic.
Yeah.
And just to accommodate our change of environment.
Right.
So
yeah, well, it's sort of two aspects with the residential stuff. That's and
absolutely.
Then
And
the
then
other one
commercial.
that may gets a lot of questions is the commercial stuff. Do we raise the? Certainly, we're not looking for high rises, but we're looking. We've talked about where one more level, one more floor would make a huge difference.
I agree, and that would also balance the quality of life. So we don't want to. We still want to keep Key West
Right.
to attract folks to come down here and want to buy, buy purchase homes
Right.
For vacation,
Right.
second homes. But yet, we need to kind of, get with a plan and get together and say, hey, maybe like you said, maybe a level or two, not to exceed that, to accommodate those commercial businesses that want to do that. So I agree. I certainly agree, and I think that's very doable, actually.
Yeah. Okay. So another thing that came up, and it's been talked about and kind of brushed, down the road, the additional dwelling unit in, adding a unit onto somebody's house where they can have either mother-in-law, adult kid, because the prices of owning a home have just gotten to be so expensive. It's hard for us. You have a 19-year-old, I have a 21-year-old. How do they come back and own housing here? Where do they live if they want to come back? There was a proposal talked about adding these ADUs into people's, if they have the room. Some people said, well, there was objections because of parking, or would it be too many people? And then people talked about passing. What is your overall opinion about adding these if you have room, in the backyard, to add, an accessory dwelling unit in somebody's yard for a family member or mother-in-law, or even for rent if they wanted to have additional income? What's your opinion on that?
And I'm a perfect example of that, actually. I live in Newtown, and we have one of those,
Okay.
and it's amazing because another great point is, this is a conversation that I'm having with my 19-year-old. It's kind of prohibited at this point for him to actually go and purchase a home.
Right.
You're in the business, so it's extremely difficult.
Yeah.
Economy is extremely challenging. So I under no circumstances would I have any type of objection if you have the ability to do so, if you have the room to do so, if you're not impeding on the easement of your neighbors or
Right.
commercial establishment. I think that would be a phenomenal idea, because then that can potentially bring back some of the generation that went to college
Yeah.
and they want to come back, and then they want to give back to the community, maybe start their own business, or maybe go into local government at this level, and that will give them that opportunity to do so. So I think it's a phenomenal idea,
Right.
and I think it's something that's extremely doable. Not everyone's going to have that ability
Of course not.
or the opportunity to do so,
Right.
but I think the folks that can do it, can afford it, I think will be great.
Yeah.
I think will be
Yeah.
amazing.
Okay,
So,
well, great. We hope to hear some more discussion on that.
Absolutely.
So what incentives, if any, should the city of Key West offer to encourage property owners to provide long-term housing for the local workforce instead of short-term vacation rentals? And I mean short-term vacation rentals like the 28-day, the monthly rental. Is there anything that we could do on the local level, do you think?
To encourage long-term in lieu of short-term.
Yeah, so there's a lot of houses right now doing monthly vacation rentals, and so is there any way we could encourage these owners to rent them long-term?
Yes, absolutely. And then and one of the things that we can actually incorporate into that, or potentially even bring to the surface, say, hey, by doing this, we can establish maybe a grant at the city level and say, hey, if you rent to workforce and extend your rentals in lieu of 28 days, a year at a time, 6 months at a time, and sometimes, especially during season, there's a lot of workforce individuals that come down to work during season, and then they go back to different areas that are thriving at that point.
Right.
So we can say, hey, we'll give you, as a property owner, we can give you incentives, whether it's a break in your taxes or some incentive money to to work on the house and try to reach an amicable agreement with that. I think it's very effective, and I think it's very doable. And
Yeah.
we can certainly entertain that.
Okay. So we're gonna continue to talk a little bit about the short-term vacation rentals, and this was a question that kind of came up, and I didn't know the answer to this, and I thought this is a great question to pose to all the candidates. So as more visitors are choosing to come to Key West and stay on boats and floating vessels rather than the traditional accommodations, do you believe that the city should adopt a policy governing short-term lodging on these vessels? Not just in the city marinas and the city-controlled waterfronts, but in general? And if so, what would those policies look like to you?
I think it's only fair because in the last probably 5 to 6 years, I've seen a lot more of these floating houses or vacation homes, for lack of a better term, just coming up everywhere. I know that Hurricane Hole probably has now like 4 or 5 of those, and they're run on a regular basis. And if we have restrictions, limitations, regulations, and policies on short-term rentals, why not impose kind of similar competitive policies on these dwellings? Because at the end of the day, you're taking away from hotels, you're taking away from potential long-term rentals. So I think, yes, we can definitely revisit that. I'm not very familiar with, but
It seems to, it was a question that was brought up to me as some resident mentioned it to me, and I said, I really don't know if we have any policies. I know with their floating vessels, and there are different rules pertaining to the short-term rentals.
Yes.
A lot of them do advertise. It does provide great income to some of these people that need it.
Yes.
And so I don't think there's any discussion that it's going to be eliminated, but somebody said, how do you regulate it? Should it be regulated in some way?
And if nothing else, actually, while we're having this discussion, going back to finding funding to fund some of these other programs that we have discussed here earlier, is maybe the city can charge a specific fee for these rentals and put that money aside to offer incentives to some of the discussions that we were having earlier.
To encourage the long-term.
And to encourage long-term rentals, to encourage some of the workforce to be able to qualify some of the tenants that, or property owners that we have in town, to say, hey, look, we have this pot of money to encourage you to give these folks a break, maybe the first, second, and last, and we'll help you and kind of work with that. So I think that's extremely intelligent to do, and it'll be another source of income for the city.
Okay. So the number of transient rentals in town is at an all-time low because of all of the transient rentals that expired at the Trim and Annex. And so now the transient license is probably worth about $500,000. We've seen some of them on the open market sell for $500,000. Do you believe that the city should maintain its current cap on transient licenses, or should we expand the licenses in certain zones, like in the correct zones? So tell us what you think about expanding, keeping it the same. What's your opinion about transient licenses?
I have to educate myself a little bit more on that topic. However, my opinion would be, right now, like you said, some of these cap licenses are going for $500,000. And if there is a possibility or a way that we can do this in a very tactful manner, where potentially we can say, hey, let's revisit and maybe do like a pet project, for lack of a better term, maybe like a prototype, and say, this year we're gonna allow 20 in transient license, see how that works out, and see how this will work with the community, with the tourist industry, with your industry, and maybe we can do a study and kind of do the research, because now if we have the limitations and they're so high, I think there's something we need to do about that. I don't know that.
Well, we had a client who owns a property close to Duval Street that's surrounded by guest houses and transient licenses, and he doesn't have a transient license, and his property is worth about $1 million less than the one next door.
Oh,
so
wow.
if it's zoned for transient. There's transients all around them, but they don't have one. He's asking me, how can I get a transient license? You know, I'm zoned in the right area. I said, I don't know. If the city's not issuing them anymore, I don't know. Is it an opportunity for the city to make some revenue?
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
Just
And,
another-
and again, and accommodate, you know, some of the local, you know, the local community and the quality of life, and say, hey, listen, this is a perfect example. I'm surrounded. Maybe I want, you know, 6 months out of the year,
Right.
maybe I want to rent it. I want that
Right.
opportunity. How can we do this?
Right.
Can you guys think about it? Can you get together, put your heads together, and come up with a program, at least like a pilot program, and try to figure it out? I think it'd be a great idea.
Right, right. Well, we'll see what happens.
Absolutely.
As, you know,
Yeah,
do you
absolutely.
think the city is doing? I mean, you were in a police officer, correct?
Yes, correct.
Right. So, do you think you probably got calls? I don't know if you did or not, but do you think that the city is doing enough to enforce the rules of vacation rentals in town as we stand? I mean, they're used to. There's talk about that we need, you know, the city needs to do more, that there's some people that have monthly licenses are breaking the law. I'm not talking about the vacation rental companies. I'm talking about owners who own the property, absentee owners who are just sending people down there for a couple of days.
So interesting, because this conversation, or this specific question or topic has come up in a few of the forums.
Right.
And there's been an awful lot of great ideas. So if you're going to do that, there should be a very painless process where your house is identified
Okay.
as one of these short-term rentals, and
We're talking 28-day minimum.
right,
Yeah.
28 days, and then that will give law enforcement and court enforcement, as they drive by and know, okay, well, we just received a call that these folks are on the 35th day,
Okay.
or the 40th, or we need to look into that. And then, since they're registered, that individual, whether it's law enforcement or court enforcement, can go back to their iPad or their tablet and say, yeah, they were supposed to be out of here 2 weeks ago,
Yeah.
and then potentially start enforcing that. So there's been a lot of great ideas to visibly identify these specific homes, and then use enforcement. I don't know about law enforcement, if they get rowdy, however, but you know, one of the branches or one of the departments within 16 departments in the city of Key West, that they'll pay a little bit more attention to that.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Yes, it's been an interesting. We've gotten different answers from different people about how we should do that, how the city should
What's
police
the
that.
best one that you've heard at this point?
Oh,
if you don't mind
yours.
me asking. Oh, okay.
Well, you know, we're telling everybody that, but no, I think that actually Mayor Didi had some good ideas about you know, hotline where people can call, you know, easy information.
Yes, I mean, but you have to know which residents are
Exactly.
fall under that
Yes.
criteria. So there has to be
Identifying the property.
Yeah, maybe you know, if not necessarily a small little sign somewhere that doesn't take away from beautification of the property, maybe a decal that's easily accessible, and they're like, okay, so this is one of these residents, and then folks can call a hotline in the city and said, hey, you may want to come and check these folks out.
Right.
They've been here for a long time now, and
Well, I think it's more the opposite. I think a lot of times when you have a license for a minimum of 28 days, they can stay for 2 months or 3 months, but it's just that sometimes
2 weeks.
2 weeks they're not supposed to really be there
weeks,
for 2
right,
weeks. Yeah,
right.
this is the problem.
good point.
So
good point.
let's move on to property insurance. And you know, property insurance has become one of the biggest obstacles to buying a house in Key West now, because it's just kind of gone up and up and up. While many decisions are made at a state level, is there any specific actions you would take as commissioner to help reduce the burden of wind and flood programs on property owners?
You know, I know they've tried, and I have a lot of friends that unfortunately could no longer afford it, and renewals went from 16,000 to 22, 25,000,
Wow.
and now that changed the whole dynamic of their budget and what they can and cannot afford. So I know that it's a very difficult, you know, process, and we will have to go to Tallahassee
Yeah.
and start there. There's some things that we can do at the local level and advocate at the local level, but then there's some things that are bigger than us, and then we will have to start in Tallahassee,
Right.
and speak to these folks that have the authority to make some changes and to enforce some changes in these private companies and say, hey, this monopoly is not working well. I think you're being unfair.
Yes, well, we've been known to be a donor state, so we pay more than we've ever received. Are you
Correct.
familiar with what firm does and what they've done in Tallahassee?
I very limited.
Yeah,
But I've
yeah.
heard that they're extremely engaged.
Oh yes, they are, and they've got a lot of support from the city and from the Realtors and the chamber, actually, that giving them money to try to. They go up there. They've got great relationships in Tallahassee, trying to
That's
again
important.
building that relationship at the state level. So we kind of mentioned it a little bit. We've had these intense rains.
Okay.
That
yes.
seem to be kind of coming now. We had one last month when the city flooded.
Covered.
Within minutes. We saw
Yes.
pictures. Of course, it's terrible for our PR when people see that on a national level.
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah.
Not very friendly for the electric vehicles either.
Right. So is there anything that you think we can do at a local level? I mean, obviously that's, we can't control the weather.
Nature is
Right?
tough.
Obviously. And we have a lot of really crazy weather going on around the country. But, do you have any ideas of what we could do to alleviate the pressure of the homeowner, the business owner, when that happens?
So the city, we have a lot of projects now on the books, and some of those are to expedite the draining process. Not only to maintain and I have to give kudos where kudos are due. The city's been doing. Public Works have been doing a very good job trying to get out there and make sure that the drains are not obstructed, and they bring the trucks and pump out and try to do the best that they can. But even better, we have projects that are coming here in the next 2 to 5 years that will facilitate a lot more drains throughout the city to kind of disperse that water a lot faster. Going back to nature is going to win every single time, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But there are projects that the city has allocated funding for going forward to be able to disperse that water as expeditiously as possible. So,
Yes. Well, so I think it's because it's happened a couple of times, like last year and then this year, that now maybe it's a little bit more on the radar.
Absolutely,
city.
and you're 1,000% correct. So it reflects very poorly on this environment, our city, being such a high tourist. I mean, it's a destination that everyone wants to come down to.
Right.
And then when you see that we had a little bit of rain for 30 minutes and 3/4 of the island is full of water,
Yeah.
It may kind of deter some
Yeah.
folks from coming down.
Yeah. So we'll talk a little bit about the building permits, the ROGOs. I don't know how familiar you are with the whole ROGO B-Pass allocation system that we have here in, we talked earlier with the mayor about, the lack of B-Pass and ROGOs. And do you know, what can we do? Can we go get some more? How do we balance that out? There's not that many left. Some were awarded to us, to the whole county. And,
Correct.
And we gave some, I believe, back up to the Key Largo area that was transferred back and forth. So what do you think about the current way we manage the B-Pass and the ROGOs?
Yeah, I mean, and this is an allocation process where we have to work very closely with the county. Like you said, there's only so many.
Yeah.
And then they've been kind of distributed and allocated to certain zones in certain areas.
Yeah.
So I know the state released probably like 117, and so that is a very unique, sensitive navigating through that whole process.
Yeah, it does require really knowing and understanding the process really well, and how do
Yes.
we work with the county on that?
And we do have a memorandum of understanding. We have a partnership with the county, the current leadership, and the county commission. Bunch of great folks that I know, and we have a great relationship. So we can definitely foster that and say, hey, let's sit down and see how we can figure this out and push that information back to Tallahassee.
Right.
So we can kind of, accommodate. They can accommodate us a little bit better when
Right.
it comes to that in this distribution and allocation.
So with kind of staying on the building permits, as a realtor in town, I hear it a lot and deal with it. I work with some builders and some customers that are trying to renovate or improve, and they're dealing with issues at the city level. And as commissioner, if you were elected as commissioner, do you think that there are things that you could bring to the table with trying to alleviate the confusion and maybe streamline the process of getting permitting at the City of Key West? Have you thought about that? What's your ideas on
I
that?
have, actually. So we recently had, I don't know if I can say this, but the Chamber hosted a,
You can say that.
the Chamber hosted an event, forum. And so I did my due diligence and tried to do some homework and spoke to some local business owners that are acquaintances and friends of mine. And I said, hey, what is your biggest obstacle or the biggest issue when it comes to that? One said, which actually, ironically enough, they used specifically what the example that I'm about to give you last night on the forum, on the
Okay.
hometown.
Sure.
And they posed that question on one of the candidates that I have brought up.
Okay.
So one of the things was this gentleman is co-owner of two restaurants, one in Duval, one in and two on the Oceanside. And he said, I've had everything ready for the last 8 months and a contractor ready to paint the facade of my restaurant on Duval, and it's taken 8 months to get a response so we can just solely paint.
That seems outrageous, doesn't it?
Renovation, everything's done. It was just the final green light and permit to just paint the place. And I thought that was disturbing because we don't live in a metropolis. I mean, it's a very small town.
Right.
And I said, we have to change that process because that's a horrible bureaucracy if you have to wait as a business owner 8 months to just be able to paint the facade. I mean, you met all the other criterias, the paint color, who's doing it, everything. So then I had another business owner that just recently, he's got a successful business in the county, just bought a building here in town, and 3 months has taken the city to, again, give this gentleman the green light to open his doors. And he said, it's costing me $150,000 a month between the renovations that I had to do on the structure, between my expenses, between the permits, everything is costing me $150,000 a month. And this is the third month that I'm going on. And I've had
But
several
have we
meetings.
been able to find out why this is happening?
It's the bureaucracy. So in the city, and what I mean by that, they do a great job. The staff is phenomenal. It's just come speak with Juan and then get the permit and get the information. Then after you speak with Juan, you need to go speak to Susan. And then you have to speak to the other person. And then they send you right back to me. So that's the process that needs to be streamlined. Why? Why do you have to go to 5 different areas when someone can give you the answer? You have the documentation that you need. Here's the application. Here's the fee. It's processed, stamped. Let's make it happen. Right now is a very lengthy, there's a lot of bureaucracy and a lot of, it just has to be streamlined. I think
Simplified, maybe?
simplify is a perfect word.
Yeah.
I think it's just, they overthought this process, and what it does at the end of the day is just complicate matters. And so then we have a business owner that's waiting 8 months to be able just to paint his restaurant, and then you have another business owner that's waiting 3 months just to open his doors.
Yeah.
And it's costing them a significant amount of money.
Yeah.
So I asked a lot of questions, and then I realized that, wow, this needs to be exactly what you said, simplified. We need to kind of like streamline this process because, yes, you're still going to meet the criteria and our regulations and our policies and our building codes and all that, but you don't have to go to 5 different departments to get those answers.
Right.
So
You would think that with so much rules and regulations and bureaucracy over there, that what happened in the city and the building department and the corruption that happened within the within the building department, within the city of Key West, wouldn't have been able to happen. I mean,
correct. And now, interesting that you mentioned that, because now what happened was we went from 0 to 100.
Right.
So now, this is another reason why it delays the process, because the current employees are so concerned with some of the things that happened in the past that now where you review, I'm not saying that you should not, but now you review the application once and twice and 3 times, and then by the 5th time you're like, okay, I'm comfortable where I can push it. Well, 5 days went by the time you received it, and you're comfortable enough to push it to the next step. So now everyone's so concerned that this process is just becoming lengthier.
Right.
You know, I mean,
Yeah.
and more time consuming.
Yeah, yeah. And also, I think that there's a level of distrust by our local community
Absolutely.
by what has happened.
Absolutely.
And how do we move forward from it? You know,
Yes.
how do we grow from it, learn from it, and move forward?
And a word that we are completely killing is the transparency. Yes, transparency is extremely important, and we understand that and we get that. But is building that trust where, like, hey, this is how we do it. Social media, you know, put this stuff in social media. This is the process.
Right.
This is the streamline, and then maintain a database where you can see you have potentially a login, or you can just go to the city website where you're at, where your permit's at, with, you know, what level, what process, what step in the process, and then you can potentially make the phone calls and say, hey, when is it moving to the next? I mean, I have to
Yeah.
expedite this.
I
And-
think they do have something like that in place right now, because we've helped with, you know, various homeowners getting, as they go along through the process. But I think what the confusion is for new people coming from out of town buying are very intimidated by our building department, our
Yes.
permitting department, and that's why I use the word, can we simplify it, but yet keep controls that we need to keep within the city levels so that it prevents any future corruption.
Yeah, and I heard
you know.
the not to interrupt you, but I heard the process kind of antiquated as well, even at the computer level, you know, where we're like, hey, there's other things that we have evolved.
Yeah.
And you know, there's programs where you get a text message, it's like, hey,
Right.
you moved to the next level.
Right.
So just come and get your permit, or come and pay your fees, and then you can just go ahead and
Right.
move on. So
I also feel for the city employees that do, there's a lot of great employees at the city. They do a
Absolutely.
great job. And
Absolutely.
I think must be frustrating for them to hear the general community, you know, give out about how the city is run and the city could do
Yes.
better. I mean, because people think they're talking about us, you know?
Yes.
And so really it's that we have to find the right balance.
no, I agree 1,000%. And like you said, I mean, there's these folks that work there are our neighbors,
Yes.
our friends,
Exactly.
you know, some are family.
Yes.
And it's not fair to them, you know, what I
Yeah.
mean, because they've done a phenomenal job. Some are been in the city for 15, 20 years.
Right.
So we need to support them and kind of streamline and that process. And the most important thing is regain that trust back.
Yeah.
It's like just
I think that's really a great way to put
just
it
because you have one person that, you know, that make critical, you know, unlawful acts, doesn't mean that everyone
Exactly.
it should be categorized, you know,
And I
as
think
such.
we just need to kind of move past it and create. things,
Absolutely,
you know.
absolutely. And whenever
yeah.
we continue to talk about this in the commission meetings, it just kills me. It's like, hey, let's come up with some positive things that we can do to improve and continue to gain the respect, you know, of the community. Now, let's not go backwards. Let's just continue to go forward, you know.
Yeah.
So
Well, let's talk about the taxes now. Let's talk about budgeting, taxes. Everyone wants to talk about, you know, what are we going to do? You know, there's all these things that we're talking about, capital improvements, things that the city are going to be doing in the
Yes.
future. And then, of course, we have proposed changes coming from our governor with regards to, you know, our homestead tax system, you know, so reducing that or increasing the homestead exemption, which could possibly reduce overall taxes eventually that we get here in Monroe County. Do you agree with what Governor DeSantis is proposing with regards to the tax, you know, the homestead tax system?
So I've been doing a lot of research, and because some of the comments that were kind of concerning to me were that some of the vital services, first responders, school, were not going to be funded. Mosquito control, for instance, you know, were not going to be funded. And ironically enough, I was paying close attention last night to the mosquito control debate, and the chairman, which is Mr. Phil Goodman, had a very good, he's been doing a significant amount of discussions and dialogue with the state regarding the funding, and they're going to be one of the folks that will be affected by that. So my point is, the proposed tax break sounds great, But then there's a lot of little things that we need to be very cautious, and we need to educate ourselves when November comes around, because there may be some ad valorem taxes added to that.
Yeah.
And if you before potentially pay, let's say $5,100 a year in taxes, you may be paying $6,500. So perfect example, I had this conversation with the mayor. She was the tax collector for a couple decades. And we had this discussion, and she said, look, the problem with that is, it sounds very attractive, but there's a lot of moving parts. And the school is going to be able to be funded. Some folks says, well, there's a pot of money that's been allocated for that purpose, but then other political individuals and elected officials say, but the problem is, yes, it'll be funded the first year to a certain extent, then you lose 20% the following year, then you lose 40%, and that's kind of one of the things that are going to happen with the mosquito control. The first year they're going to lose a percentage of that funding, and then the second year they're going to lose like 30% of that funding. So then they're going to have to find ways, and they're working on how can we get grants from the state and potentially the federal level to maintain our program and continue to evolve and provide the service that they provide to our community. Fire department, first responders, right?
Well, let's talk about the
ambulance.
fire department. In our bond that Key West approved, it approved the building of a new firehouse.
Correct.
And are you in agreement with that? Do you think that we should be spending our tax dollars on that? That's a big project. Some people are in agreement, some people not so much. Where do you stand on that?
So it's a vital service. We're not a huge metropolis, which we've had this discussion, during this interview, but we have plenty of firehouses. Some need some renovations, and I understand that. It's a little bit more cost effective to renovate and put some money in some of the current structures that we have, in lieu of having to find a piece of land and start from scratch, because that takes a significant amount of money. So I have mixed feelings on that when it comes to that, because it is a vital service, and I understand it, and these folks have to go through a significant amount of training. However, is it the best use of our tax dollars? Is it the best use of our operational funding allocated for this? I mean, if we have 7, 8 fire stations, do we need 8 or 9? Has our population grew that much? Because like you said earlier, there's limitations of where you can build. I mean, we're not going to be able to continue to build.
Yeah.
Because
Well,
we have these
other
limitations.
things, of course. There's lots of projects that need to be done, and so basically, am I hearing you're not for a tax raise, or are you?
No, definitely not a tax raise.
Definitely not a tax raise.
Yes, definitely not a tax raise, and we just have to be good stewards of the money that we do have and that we generate to be dispersed and allocated very intelligently, very responsibly. So to start just saying, well, we need this. Well, do we?
Right.
I mean, can we do without? Did we have it before? And we still did great, and we were able to respond to to the incidents that we need or that we had. Can we use that money right now for something that's a little bit more pressing?
Right.
And then in lieu of having to raise taxes to accommodate that?
Right.
So that's the things, that's the discussions and the forums and the committee meetings that will have to take place within the city itself.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, let's be good stewards of the money that we have.
Right. We've seen some candidates talk about the amount of land buildings that the city already owns, and we've just acquired Higgs Beach. What do you were you for that? Were you in favor of Key West taking over Higgs Beach? What are your thoughts on?
I may not agree with everyone on that.
Right.
But my take
just tell us your thoughts.
So my take is this: if my neighbor, which in this case is the county of Monroe, has a piece of property, in this case 16.5 acres of waterfront property, and they said, hey, we're going to go ahead and transfer this, and on top of that, I'm going to give you $4 million so you can do some renovation, because the seawall needs a little bit of help. The bathrooms are only 2 years old or 3 years old at the most. The pickleball courts and the tennis courts have been renovated. We have a tenant there, which is Salute. There's other sources of revenue that we can be creative and come up with. We have the dog park that may need a little bit of love, but which is fine. We have money, and then we have insurance money that from the last hurricane to renovate some of the two playgrounds that we have within that 16 and a half acres. I said, we'll be crazy not to take that. I mean, and that's my personal opinion. It's in the city of Key West, so we already own,
Right.
I mean, it's in the city, our jurisdiction, it's in our jurisdiction. Some folks are like, well, but we have to allocate now, somebody needs to cut the grass. No, the city of Key West has a public works department.
Right.
So, which they can accommodate and maintain that grass.
Right.
And then there's funding that came with that. And then there's not only state, but then there's federal grant for parks, parks and recreation that we can allocate and ask for and request these grants to maintain what we have. So I think we will be crazy not to. I thought it was, a lot of folks are like, well, but why the push from the county to do that? But I said, well, guess what? But they gave us money with it.
Right. Well, they had the money, but they didn't really, this money's been sitting in the bank account, and there's lots of things that needed to be done that weren't getting done. So
correct. And now we're in the process. I mean, they already started, doing a lot of renovation, a lot of work.
Right.
The seawall was already, the funding has been allocated, and they started to work on that. So I just think that it's a phenomenal piece of property that we can evolve and we can take ownership of and be very proud of. And then at the same time, come up with some creative ways to make some revenue out of it. Maybe
Right.
I would say 15, 20 years ago, I remember they used to have concerts out there.
Yeah.
And then just charge, it's a city, now it's a city venue,
Right.
And then, charge an attendance fee or, whatever, and then have some vendors that will come in and then rent some spots, some food trucks and generate some revenue out of that back to the city so we can allocate that to other programs that will be helpful
That's a great
for our
idea.
community.
That's a great idea. Yeah, we have often seen in travels where they have, a night of all different kinds of food trucks there. People go.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
So it's
I
good
just,
ideas.
I know. I mean, everyone's going to have an opinion. I just thought.
I have to ask you about one thing because we've asked everyone.
Okay.
The city of Key West does parking really well. I don't know if you know, but I think the city makes $9 million a year from parking, which is a lot of revenue. When they first took over Higgs Beach, everybody was like, oh no, we're going to get charged parking there now. Because that's what the city does well. And it's an easy way to make money. What are your opinions? Would you charge locals to park there or give 4-hour free, or what do you think about the parking situation
Well,
at Higgs Beach?
and I get it, and I understand it, and money is extremely important. However, that's a piece of culture of Key West. Why not maintain it the way we have it? Where locals can just, and if you still want to make some revenue, and I know it's an inconvenience, well, maybe have like a permit program
Right.
for the locals. I know it's an inconvenience, but you go to City Hall, register, get your permit, and every time you go to City Hall or to Higgs Beach, you don't have to worry about that.
Right.
But then still potentially make some revenue. Now, am I for charging our residents to use, one of our facilities like Higgs Beach? No, absolutely not. And I think that goes back to, our heritage and just having that piece of property accessible and available for us.
Yeah.
I think it'd be great. But we can just come up with creative ways that if you still want to make a little money on that, okay, well, you're a resident. There's officers that patrol the area. So if you don't have a permit there and you don't have your parking
Right.
receipt or whatever, then you get charged. But for us to charge our residents to use something that it's kind of ownership, of our town. I think that's a horrible idea.
Well, good.
So-
Well, I'm glad that you see great visions for Higgs Beach.
I think it's
within Key
it's
West.
a potential,
Yeah.
beautiful piece of property that we can.
Yeah, I'm
that we
excited
can
that
work
we
on.
finally own it. So why don't you tell the viewers, when you're not working and campaigning, what do you like to do here in Key West?
So, spend time with my family in the water. So I love, I grew up in the water. My 2 decades in the military, I was a diver for the Navy. So, and that's just my passion. So, which it goes again, why your initial question was, why did you make this decision? Well, preserving our resources, our quality of life, maintaining our water. And I have to tell you, it's so impressive to see how our locals and our community protect our resources, because we go to the sandbars and we have a phenomenal day with our families and friends, and when we leave there, you don't see a toothpick. So great stewardship of owning this piece of paradise.
Right.
So so to answer that, that's what I like to do. I like to enjoy the paradise that we live in. It comes with a cost, of course.
Yes.
Like everything in life, but I love it. That's what I do. We go out on the boat, and that's my downtime. Just to kind of sync with nature, and just be able to relax. And a lot of the times there is no signal on the phone, so that's even better.
Even better. I know. I like that myself. And so finally, so you've got you're running against Wayne Garcia.
Yep, Mr. Wayne Garcia and Sarah Compton. Yes, correct.
And so we're going to finish up. Why don't you tell our viewers why they should vote for you over the other candidates?
Absolutely.
Why should we vote?
Yes. So here we go. Right. You don't have to be a subject matter expert to be a city commissioner. However, you need to have the foundation. One of the questions that you asked, to be able to communicate with your colleagues and the dais, to be able to reach an amicable agreement that's in the best interest of the city when you make decisions that affects everyone, affects the business owners, affects the residents. The other thing is education is extremely important. I've been in the Harvard Business School for Leadership. I have criminal justice degrees. So that's extremely important. So you'll be able to navigate and think and have a process in place. The other thing is experience, leadership experience. Having worked with the military for 2 decades, leadership and management was extremely important. This is one of the things that they foster from the time you walk in the door to the time that you retire. Same thing when you go into law enforcement. These are critical skills. So management, leadership, be able to delegate and to work with the city staff, which is a phenomenal staff. And we got a lot of work to do, because we had this discussion, right? We have to try to reestablish that trust, and that clarity. And I don't want to use that word, but the transparency that we need back in City Hall. The fiscal responsibility, because we spoke about a lot of money and allocating funds and taxes, and that we acquire this piece of property. Was it a good decision? So I feel that I have a lot of these things going for me, because I've prepared my entire adult life for this moment, for this opportunity. I was able to chair some nonprofit organizations, which requires the ability to be able to have a knowledge of budgeting and how to allocate budget and how to put a budget together for the next fiscal year or the next year, and who are we going to make donations to. So, which is very similar, because we have budget committees in the city.
Sure.
So I'm in a place in my life where I've prepared for this opportunity, and I feel that I am extremely eager and ready to do what's in the best interest of our property owners, our residents, our tourists, maintaining that balance of tourism and quality of life for our residents, protecting our local business owners, which are so important for our community, because not only do they employ the workforce, but they give back. I know you give back. I've seen, where you donate, baskets to when we have the chamber golf, tournaments. So we give back, and you get back to, scholarships in town. So these are the folks that make our town what it is, and that's extremely important. And certainly I like to maintain that relationship and that support of the folks that make Key West what's Key West.
Great. Well, I want to
So-
thank you for taking the time to come talk to me today. It's
It's
been
been
great
great.
getting to know you.
Likewise, I appreciate
and
it.
really nice talking to you. So great answers to these questions. I think
Thank you.
people get to know you a little bit more.
Thank you.
So thank you so much again, Juan Llera, going
appreciate
for
it.
District
4.
District 4.
Yeah,
District
Commissioner
4.
District 4.
Yeah. So good luck in the election.
Thank you.
Wish you all
Thank
the
you.
best.
I didn't know what to expect, but you made it very easy for me. So thank
well,
you.
good,
It was
good.
wonderful.
Thank you so much.
So
Appreciate it.
It is a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.